Hello and welcome to another episode of midierror Meets, where we talk to all sorts of people who work in sound and music. On the show this time, we've got Norman Cook, Fatboy Slim, DJ Quentox, the Ox that rocks, one of the biggest DJs in the world, one of the most prolific remixers and producers. Literally one of the reasons that I got into making electronic music is through Norman Cook's music, through Better Living Through Chemistry. You've Come a Long Way Baby, which was huge across the globe and beyond. He's just an absolute hero. You can support the podcast by donating. I do all this stuff by myself, and if you do donate, you get a shout out and you get added to the MIDI Arpeggiation Hall of Fame. So thank you very much to Jason McManus and Joseph Varty for your donations. It's very much appreciated. It really helps to just keep this thing going. But let's get on with the show, and the first thing I asked Norman was about his musical beginnings.
My early memories of music as a child are very, very strong. Both my parents loved singing and music, not professionally or anything like that. They just loved it. So there's always a lot of music around, and my first memory of the power of music was that on long car journeys we would often sing just to break up the fights and the arguments. We'd sort of sing, and it was that because there's 5 in my family and we could all sing all right. So then when there was a little Ford Zodiac full of us singing, and we would do harmonies and stuff like that, there was this power that really struck me of when people sing together, when you make music together, something happens that really excited me and really empowered me. And it wasn't just because it stopped the arguments. It was like there was a kind of the noise that those 5 voices made became bigger than the sum of the 5 parts. And I remember just thinking, God, this is really exciting. I really like this. And constantly over my career since, there's been little moments when I feel that again. And I suppose that's probably what's kept me going for so long, is I still get that little thrill. I mean, the last time I got it, I did a friend had their 50th birthday party just before lockdown. And we got together a little pickup band because tons of our friends were all musicians. So there was various musicians and we got together and rehearsed and played like 5 songs. And just that feeling of being in a room and just playing along with someone, and like at first it sounds really rotten, and then there's that moment where it kicks in and you there's this noise that, like I said, is bigger than the sum of the parts. And I've always loved that power of music.
Amazing. And what sort of songs were you listening to in the car?
Oh, we were playing, there's a lot of Carpenters, a lot of Beatles, a lot of Peter, Paul and Mary. They're really easy ones to sing. For those younger viewers who don't know Peter, Paul and Mary, they were like a kind of, they were this sanitised version of 60s protest singing.
Okay.
They're very beautiful harmonies, but they would take resung all Bob Dylan songs, but kind of took all the grit out of them and made them a lot more radio friendly. And yeah, they were sort of the acceptable face of folk protest songs. So I learned a lot of sort of Pete Seeger and Arlo Guthrie songs and Bob Dylan songs, but sung in a beautiful way and very, very much lending themselves to harmonies.
Nice, yeah, because there is a great power to like choral groups, isn't there? When people sing together, even when 2 or 3 people harmonise, there is like a real beauty there.
Yeah, and there's a power, but there's an emotion, and there's a feeling of there's a sort of collective feeling. Because I remember again, I was sort of inspired because we were singing songs like "Blowing in the Wind" and sort of protest songs and songs about unity and togetherness, and I was like, oh God, this really does feel like we're one person, one being, and one world.
Amazing, yeah. And I didn't realise you were one of 5 as well. That must have been quite a fun sort of upbringing.
I was the youngest of 5, which I think, if you ask psychologists, that explains a lot.
Okay.
The youngest is like the last one who gets away with murder, but feels they have to show off to make their voice heard because they're the youngest.
Completely makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, great. Well, I mean, yeah, your sort of early part of your career is very well documented. So I think in terms of talking about the House Martins and talking about your early sort of formative stuff, that's all certainly been covered. But when did you move to Brighton? When was it that you first moved to Brighton?
I can't remember what year it was. I moved to Brighton to come to Polytechnic when I was 18. You'll have to do the maths. I'm 57 now.
Okay.
I came down here to go to college, my sister had been at university here the 2 years. She's 2 years older than me, and she'd been there, and I used to come down and stay in Brighton for weekends with my sister, and I'd kind of fallen in love with the vibe of the place, and so when it came to time to go to college, I didn't care what course I did. I just knew what city I wanted to be in.
Brilliant.
And so I came down here to go to college and just never really left.
Amazing. You got a 2-1 in...
British Studies, Combined Humanities.
There you go. So it wasn't just about the place, you managed.
Yeah, but ironically, never used it. I had a deal with myself and with my parents that I would, if I was going to go to college, then I would not be in bands. Well, it's because I'd been in bands with Paul Heaton, and that caused me to fail my A-levels first time round. And then, so I sort of said to myself, there's no point in going to college and then quit, doing a year and a half of it and then running off and being in a band. So coming down here, that sort of moved me away from Paul. So the band I was in with Paul kind of split up. And so I just promised myself that I would stay out of bands. But that meant I just threw myself into DJing, which stood me well in later life. But it was, the ironic thing was that when all the time that I was at college, I worked in a record shop and part-time. And I knew that the manager of the record shop, he didn't employ graduates, because he said basically, that people finish college and they say, right, okay, I'm going to work full-time now. I train them up to do all the buying and everything like that, and after about a year, they fuck off. And so he told me that all the way through. So when the time came, I told him I failed. He trained me up to do the buying. 6 months later, I fucked off.
Oh, wow.
So sorry, Graham.
Yeah.
So ironically, the only one honest, decent job I've ever had, I actually lied and told them that I didn't have a degree. Mm-hmm. But it was, it was never supposed to be vocational. My master plan was always to be in the music business.
I love that. Yeah, I think you had that spark from early on, and also being in the House Martins, you all sort of went off to do big things. Yeah.
Apart from Huey, bless him, who really didn't want to be, he didn't enjoy the attention and the lifestyle of all that. So he went back underground. But the rest of us, we were all sort of show offs, and it was lovely. My relationship with the House Martins is that you kind of, it's like your first sexual encounter. It's like not necessarily your best, but you'll never forget it. And
Very true.
So I will never forget they were my first, and we went through being on top of the pops and all those things, going through them together. So I'll never forget that. But yeah, ultimately we were all, like any relationship, we were kind of pushing in different directions, and we're a lot better friends not being married to each other anymore. You
did mention a funny story about you doing the world's longest burp. Paul said that you'd done the world's longest burp.
Yeah, Archbishop Desmond Tutu and his wife.
Have you ever managed to beat that burp? Have you ever done
No, because I tried to do it because I can't remember if Paul reminded me or somebody.
It was in an article I read. Paul phoned you up and said about it, I think.
Yeah, no, he said, what was the word you used to say that you could say in one burp? That's just, it's 3 years on the road with the band, with 4 lads at that age, and silly things go on. And
it's brilliant. That made me laugh a lot. So you sort of there was a bit of a hip hop scene in Brighton at that time, or you.
I was trying to instill a hip hop scene. I'm not sure that you could actually call it a scene. No, it was just I really loved hip hop. I really loved it. It reminded me because when I was a kid, punk rock really influenced me, because it was like it went from, you had these pop stars to, look, anyone can do this, here's a drum kit and a guitar, and now form a band. And I really liked that. And that was how I got into actually properly playing music. I wasn't that good a musician, but it was like, fuck it, let's start a band. And and hip hop had that sort of same thing, that if you weren't a DJ, you could be an MC, and if you weren't an MC, you'd be a breakdancer. If you weren't a breakdancer, you'd be a graffiti artist. And it's like everybody was getting involved in stuff rather than just. And that really turned me on, and I really liked the music, and I sort of totally bought into that whole b-boy culture thing, which is really strange, being a white middle class suburban kid, but you just buy into it. And in those days there was just a very small amount of us that were into it, and out of that there's only about 4 of us who were over 18 and the rest were all these kids, and they just loved breakdancing and graffiti and so I just like, I don't know, I just kind of became. They used to come around and like dance in my because they all lived with their parents, so they used to come and hang out at my house and put a line on the floor and do breakdancing, and it was lovely. It was really nice. Little bunch of kids. It's quite funny. Every now and then I bump into them, and of course they're all now in their 40s or whatever, and they go, "Oh yeah, do you remember those hip hop jams?" But it was just something that I enjoyed doing, and so we used to put on these sort of under 18s hip hop jams. Just to give the kids somewhere to go. And
I love that multidisciplinary thing about hip hop. Like you said, the graffiti. It's like a 3-dimensional space of breakdancing. All of those things that came together. It was like the crew. It was way beyond just the music, wasn't it? Although the music's the driving force for it, but it was. Yes,
I mean, similarly to punk, and similarly to punk was like, anyone can be a journalist, anyone can do a fanzine, and then so there's punk, and then there was hip hop, and then there was acid house. That for me, they were the 3 great revolutions, which said, you don't have to bow down to the man to do this, and you don't have to be that talented. Just get out there and do it for yourself, and you never know, you might just shake up the whole industry. And
definitely,
and some people did very well out of it, and some people didn't, but they had a great time trying. But it was it's that independent spirit, that sort of frontier spirit of, we're not going to live by your rules. We'll do this on ourselves. That's always really turned me on.
Definitely, yeah. And years later, you did have contact with the Clash when you released "Dub Bigger to Me."
For all the wrong reasons.
But it ended up being good, right? It ended up being.
Yeah, I ended up being friends with them. It's an interesting way of meeting your heroes, is to be sued by them. It was just a misunderstanding. Those were the bad old days of sampling, where you had no idea what was legal or illegal, or what was allowed.
Yeah, you did talk about the fast changing rules of sample clearance, because it was a bit of a Wild West. It was Wild West days, wasn't it? So there was nothing set in stone about using these things to samplers to record stuff and put it in your own tracks. But I did like that you said in the article that I read that they got in touch with you and said, "Can we have some money?" And you said, "Of course you can." It seemed like quite an amicable.
Oh, we were going quite fast. It was just a bit touchy at the start.